I think this may be my biggest takeaway I can give the audience listening. Getting your game to the 80% is good enough.
I actually hate the word polish. I can't stand it.
Friction's okay.
Hey there, I'm Connor, and I've made $150 in lifetime revenue on Steam, and I'm here with my co-host Corey, who's made over $100 million of lifetime revenue on Steam. We're two devs at different points of the journey, figuring out what it takes to be a successful game dev. This is a podcast about game development. So today's topic, we wanted to cover what it actually takes to make a game that is highly polished and that players are going to love and be delighted by. You have a number of games under your belt, and 3 of them upcoming, which will have links, I think, to all those games in the description. But Corey, I think people want to pick your brain and learn more about what is your process for that, and what would you recommend to developers like myself who maybe struggle getting past that point and don't have as many repetitions making these polished games. So what do you got for us?
You're richer than you think. You're richer than you think. I think you said 100 million instead of a million, but sure, I'll take it.
100 million? Okay, perfect.
That's where we're going.
All right, we can't redo it now. It's too late.
Polishing game jams and getting out finalized games, I guess. Well, okay, this came about because I messaged you and I was like, look, here's some stats. Like I'm spending more than 60% of all the lines and commits on this project are in like the last month, just me, and removing like prefabs and meta and JSON data that doesn't count. And it got me really remembering that last 20% is like 60, 80% of the work. And I see this time over time. Like people have good games, but not excellent games. And they'll hit good and they'll be like, that's good enough, and they'll ship to Steam. And it's actually like, that's the starting point. That's you're not even halfway. Like you have a mechanically sound game, you have a functional game, it plays. It's like you still have 2 times the amount of effort to get it to the spot that like consumers are actually going to watch and see it and want to buy it.
And that's huge for your strategy as well, because when you are thinking about content creators and what they want to show something to their audience that is highly polished too. So as the game developer, you almost have an obligation to make sure that it's at that point, because it's not just, your name on the line or your quality of work. It's people who are going to play the game, show it off. They don't want to show something that, is clunky or isn't quite ready, right? That means they just wouldn't make the video of it, or they wouldn't live stream it. So
even before playing it,
yeah,
like they go to your store page, and even myself as a consumer, I can sniff out a not polished game very quickly. Like the typical tutorial hell kind of like UI, there's things that just don't look as polished as they could be. They look janky in terms of art, unless you're going for like that retro style vibe of your game. But right away you're like, oh, why would I pay, whatever the price is, $3, $4, $5, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10.
Yeah.
And you're like, the game doesn't even look of that bar. The content creators do the exact same thing. They go to your store page, they look at the screenshots, they look at the GIFs, and they look at the trailer, and they are deciding, is this worth my time sitting down and redeeming the key and pressing record before they've even played? And that is all the finessing. Like, Just Keep Fishing is the one that I pull the stats for, and it's all these super, super, super minor things that all compound. Like the way the fish go to the barrel. Instead of it going straight, it's a slight arc. Oh, the way that the barrel explodes when you hit the objectives. Does it feel good? Is it squishy enough? Oh, how many gems are you getting each level? To really drive home the point, I accidentally introduced some performance stuff that killed the fun of the game. So it would take all these gems spewing out and add like 20 millisecond buffer and collapse these into one currency instead of like hundreds of these or whatever.
Yeah.
I play the game, instantly I'm like, this is the worst game ever. This is not fun anymore. So even though that's the performant thing to do, visually it just kills all the funness of like feeling like, oh my goodness, look at the game, look how much I'm getting. It just killed the fun.
So what you're saying is, what you're saying is, so for people who haven't played it, when you're playing, the name is Keep On Fishing, right? Just Keep Fishing. Just Keep Fishing.
Just Keep Fishing.
When you fish, you fill up your inventory full of fish. You go back to this barrel that's in the center of the stage, and you press a button, and it like unloads your entire inventory in. And what happens at the lower levels is it spawns a bunch of gems, treasure, money, and you get to collect that as currency. And it sounds like what you did was you changed it to make it more performant later on, to reduce the number of things that get spawned into one currency that like kind of consolidated. But in doing that, you removed like the juice and the polish and the visual feedback there of the fantasy of getting a lot of money as well.
Yeah. Well,
Interesting.
think about it. If you have $1 billion payout and you highest currency is $1 million, right? We're talking about 1,000 coins that are going to be spewed out on every single one of these kind of deposits.
Mm-hmm.
So you think, okay, that's just going to get insane. It also too far doesn't visually ruin it, but makes
Mm-hmm.
it tedious to the player to have to do the chore of cleaning up, and then they don't
Right.
want to play and disengage. So
Right.
you're trying to find a sweet spot of like, how do I make the game performant with all this stuff going on and everything being spewed? And the coins are also physics based, so you have 1,000 entities at physics. That's too much. Let's clamp that down. So, I'm 20 millisecond buffer, but the way they push out of the barrels all at the same time, so you basically end up with like 4 coins. You go from 1,000 to 4, and you're like, oh my goodness, this feels terrible.
Yeah. Because you're kind of using it as a proxy of like the number of particles you see on screen is how much money you're actually getting. And so when it gets to 4, you're like, oh, I got less money, even though value-wise it is more.
Yeah, literally, the money amount is the exact same. You still got the $1 billion, but you just feel like, oh my goodness, I'm useless. I'm gonna make no progress in this game. Look how little I got, especially on the lower levels, because maybe you have like a currency that's 10, 15, 20, and it's producing more of these.
Right.
And for the amount you're getting and the different types visually, so you feel like you're getting more. There's perception of getting more.
Yeah.
Versus here, if you only have $1 million coin and you got $1 billion payout, before the 20 milliseconds would be 1,000. Now all of a sudden we're down to 1, 2, 3, 4 of these, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is worse than the starting. Like, it's gonna take forever.
Yeah, and like it's so funny because these are all the things that I could imagine, and I might have even been one of the people who was like, when I have to go around and collect all these things, it's kind of a chore. It's too much. I don't want to have to run around because that's not what I want. But you have to, like you're saying, weed through that feedback and understand what is actually happening, and try to figure out what is that sweet spot of, okay, this is at the point where it's beyond a chore, but also not so much that you're making it so convenient that you optimize the fun out of the game. Because I think you've talked about that before, is like players left to their own devices to like balance the game as much as they want would actually remove the fun because they make it too optimized, not realizing that some of these things are actually what make the game enjoyable and add to the fun that they're having.
And I have a example tying back to this is Aramis Andy was playtesting, and he said exactly that. He said, hey, at this level, it feels like a chore to get the diamonds. I'm not super excited about it. Okay, but did you keep playing? Well, yeah, but it kind of is a little bit of a chore, and I kind of started ignoring it. And I'm like, but that's actually the game design intended behavior from me, because we're going to progress to a point where there's so much stuff coming out. I don't want you to be going to collecting it all. I actually, earlier on, am planting this mindset of, you make so much money, that's $1 million. I don't care anymore. Like, I'm making 100 billion over here. I'm not going to go pick up other stuff. I'm just going to go. I'm going to do what the title is too. I'm just going to keep fishing, deposit, and if I happen to walk on the money, I happen to walk on the money.
Right.
And there's ways other in the game that mitigate this. Is you unlock something that pulls in the gems to not have to always have all this scattered stuff. And ironically, some of the things in the final game are performance based, but they help the player. So if I have it where you deposit to the barrel and it pulls in all the gems, you think, oh, that makes it so much more convenient for the player. They don't always have to go get all these scattered gems. That's an evolution of taking something that's fun that then becomes tedious, and then you remove it altogether to not be tedious anymore. Well, it's actually a performance thing, so I don't have to have thousands and thousands of these things just floating around on the screen all the time because you decide to not pick it up. I'm basically in-game garbage collecting to prevent performance issues. And this is the stuff that I really think you identify this last 20% of your game, because so much has happened in this last 50% of the game where it's like, oh, this stuff used to work, but now it doesn't work. The picking up gem behavior I was explaining, it's fun and rewarding early. then it kind of becomes tedious at some point. One, because you've been doing the same thing over and over. And then you kind of like, I don't want to do it anymore because there's just so much stuff happening and so much stuff coming out. And that's just because the game has progressed to the point where, you know, in this type of game, there's just so much happening and there's so much money coming out. And I think it's easy to just go, oh, but the core loop has always been that way. I'm just going to leave it. Like, they've always collected. Why would I change that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I like sometimes I feel like this when I'm playing RPGs, like very narrative heavy ones where, you know, I'm enjoying the game, and then I get to, we'll call it maybe 60 to 70% of the way through, and I'm just like, I just want to get through this game as quickly as possible. And because I'm repeating, it's like there's nothing new that's being added. I've discovered all the characters. I have my party. I kind of like the play style that I'm going for, but there's not like a change in behavior, and it causes that situation where I feel like like the logical conclusion is that I've seen everything. I have all my abilities. I just need to get to the end. And so my goal almost becomes too fixated on get to the end versus still remaining in that exploratory phase. And in some ways, I almost wish that part of it, once it gets there, that the game just kind of nicely wraps up and kind of recognizes, hey, you've done everything. Now you're rewarded with some extra challenges to really dive deep, but it's going to be kind of a quick fall off. But I think the challenge of what you're saying of incremental games in particular is you kind of have to keep that going. There always kind of has to be this promise of something new, something that's a little bit hidden, but also be open to changing the way that a player is experiencing the game in subtle ways that, you know, that it feels fresh. But like the time span of what you're talking about, like I'm talking about like an RPG that's, you know, 30 hours more. You're talking about a game that's much shorter than that, but, you know, still trying to get that promise, and that the loops within that are even shorter, of like 30 minutes or less, right?
Yeah, but it's also just like what the expectations are. Like, particularly for the incremental games, it's usually because the expectations are set that's already fast pacing. So
Gotcha.
it's kind of hard to have something that ramps up and you really slow down to this flat level. It's possible. It just makes it incredibly hard to design these types of games.
Yeah.
So then typically you just have to continue to ramp up, maybe not at the same speed, but you're not going to have a flat area in your game. So then you are stuck, like you're saying, of this. You have to just keep introducing. It has to get sillier, crazier, bigger, more. It's just the type of game. Not all games, obviously, are going to follow this. You can have a much more slower paced game that engages the user, has critical thinking, stopping, pausing, make a decision, more strategic. I think I would say, for someone who wants to ship a game, that, and me being in the middle of shipping these, it's a reminder to Connor that whatever estimate you have is super wrong. Because you're going to plan it out for all the core stuff that are the knowns. And really this polished stuff, even with me having done 3 other games, I still underestimate, even knowing like how much time I spent on Black Hole, just how much there is. And it's things that you find as you go. It's like, well, the fish should probably do this arc. Oh, if that does it, they should all do that. Oh, there should be cohesiveness on all these systems to follow the same kind of visual effect. Things like there's a sound manager. You think sound manager done. Until you got later in the game where some sounds, because of the frequency of just how often they're happening, you're like, okay, I have to go, let's revamp the sound manager. It needs to pull down the sound after, you know, a certain threshold, or the frequency of how many times it happens. Oh, the concurrency is actually not going to work for this. Like coin pickups, you're picking up hundreds and hundreds of these at the end. And even if you clamp the concurrency, it just, there's so much happening that amplifies. And even if you add a pitch variance and everything, I've gone and tried, it's like that system just needs to have something where it's like, if you sustain or surpass the concurrency over enough time, it just needs to pull down the sound.
I see.
Also because it's dampening out everything else. You don't hear anything else because that's like, and it's such a frequent thing that you do at the end that it just drowns out a lot of the songs, the other sound effects. I mean, but you don't plan this stuff. You honestly, even for me, shipping all these games, I don't sit there. Sound manager, sure, easy, identified. I know how long. It wasn't until the very end where I'm like, oh, okay, this sound's just not going to work this way. Let me go in, change it. And then you start seeing else spots. Oh, the amount of drones that happen. Okay, that's going to be a problem. The amount of the 2x proc effects, that's going to be an issue. All this stuff creeps up on you.
Yeah. Well, and then it's like you have to deal with the decisions that you made previously because you're like, oh, this is going to be a later problem, or you're just not thinking about it. And then when it all comes together and you're like, what do we have to do? You're like, oh, shoot, now we have to go and do it. And which I guess is, that's why they call it polish, is because you're going through and like rounding out those rough edges. It's kind of based on the things that you've already created and having to go back and reconcile that. So it makes sense. I think where like some of the questions that I still have would be around, again, I'm maybe used to it more from working on game jams. Go to a wild jam, it's 10 days. Some of these other 48-hour weekend jams, like they're very different. And so from my expectation, I'm not really thinking about the difference between going from something like that's a game jam game, to something that's maybe like a playable demo ready for revealing to players to play, that's maybe not Steam Next Fest, then to Steam Next Fest, and then from Steam Next Fest into the finish. So how do you, like, if you were going to describe that or walk someone through going through each of those milestones, how might you give people kind of helpful ideas of what they should be thinking about and what still might be included? One of the things that stands out to me is that your menus, for example, I always know whenever I get one of your playtests, it's going to be already having animations and things. Like, you're not just throwing out the basic stuff. There's something there. So how do you think about that to really tell that difference between what is something that's good to have early on versus what is something that really is only in that final push going from a next best demo into full release?
Ooh, I don't have a strict rule on this.
Okay.
And actually, I'd say co-developing, we have counter viewpoints with me and the code developers.
Interesting. Tell me about it.
Just keep fishing. There was a spot where the fish movement was pretty janky. Mm-hmm. It worked, but it definitely had some robotic feel to it. Like it would fully just rotate, not move in
Okay.
spot.
Yeah.
And I knew this was an issue. I didn't think it needed to be addressed in that moment.
Sure.
And even if it did, even if the playtesters were like, the fish movement is messed up. And the question then is not, oh, do I stop the playtesters? Is, did you stop playing the game because solely of the fish movement?
I see.
If it's so ruining of the experience, okay. But I didn't think it would. I thought, okay, the game is fun enough that, people are going to complain. Note it. We already know. Move on. What about the rest of the game? Mm-hmm. But for Andy or Thomas, I don't remember who, they were like, this ruins my experience. I will not let this ship unless we fix the movement.
Yeah.
Personally, I thought that was a mistake because it delayed like a day or two of getting more playtests on the full game.
Yeah.
Did we end up with a better fish movement? Of course. And I knew we had to do that. I just didn't think we needed to do it in that moment.
Yeah. Okay. We'll blame Andy for that one because Thomas is never wrong. Thomas is like, there's no way he's ever been wrong ever. So, definitely was Andy.
And like I said, I knew it was janky. I knew it needed to revamp. It's just a question of then or not. And some of that's just gut and instinct. And like, sometimes you'll be wrong. And it just depends on the risk. Like if it's just a playtester, small group of 10 people, you're like, the worst thing is I ruined the experience for those 10 off of this. And I'm going to get like super biased feedback because they can't move past the fish movement. Now, if you plan for this with your playtesters, if you have 50 playtesters or even 20, the goal is not to just go to 20 up front. Because if you have a bad thing like this and you burn all your full capacity playtesters, you don't have anybody else to playtest. Like if I had bad fish movement and that ruined the experience for all 10 and I only have 10, that's it. Like you can try and go back, fix it, and convince them to play again. But now they're biased. You're not going to get the full feedback of a first playthrough and things like this. So you just portion out your group of playtesters.
Yeah, that's a really interesting approach. There was a couple things in there. So just on the playtester note, I think sometimes, even I think about, let me just like post to everybody and like get it out of the way, right? But I think you're right that if you can kind of sequence it in such that there's different batches of playtesters who are getting it, you can kind of look at it and say, over the next 2 weeks, I need to get however many playtests. Let me do this many on this day. this many on this day. And in that time, if there's an opportunity for us to fix things that seem like it's preventing people from moving forward, your hope is that by the end, the last playtesters actually have fewer and fewer, like along the way, you have fewer and fewer things that you're getting repeat comments on. They're either discovering new stuff or they aren't saying the things that you have addressed. So that way, by the end of it, you kind of look at it across the board and say, hey, what did we learn and things like that. I think the other interesting piece that you mentioned there was almost having a group of people who you could talk to and not arguing over the point of, hey, is this the right time to do it or not? If you were talking about it in terms of percentages of saying, okay, let's come to the table somewhere between 0 and 100%, this thing is going to cause someone to stop playing the game or not take the action that we need them to take in this current moment of what we're trying to test. And so if you came together and said, we'll say Thomas is like, this is like a 10% chance for me that I think that someone is going to stop playing the game because the fish movement looks bad. And Andy's like, no, this is 90%. It's breaking my immersion. And you're like 0%. Well, then the truth is probably somewhere like 20 to 30% where that's really what it is. And so then you go from there. If this is like, what is the impact of this happening if we're wrong? Like if it's in that 30% and someone stops playing the game, is that bad? And how quickly would it take for us to reconcile that? And even if it was upwards of 80%, if it's really quick to fix, you still may not even fix it because you could just do it in the next batch. And you're like, okay, well, let's just get that feedback and then let's move on. But it's
like a risk versus reward. And it's like an open door decision in terms of like, we can always go change it. We have more playtesters. We know what our downside loss function is. Our loss function is we burned the 10 playtesters. They all complain it's the worst experience ever. They couldn't move past the fishing. Okay, on the upside is some of them don't even notice, and then we overthink that us as devs that this is critical to the game immersion. Maybe none of them even comment about it, and in which case it's like, well, then actually it's probably not as important as you think it is.
Yeah.
And the upside is we get the full cycle of feedback on all 10. And yeah, it could be somewhere in between. It could be mixed. It could be some people being like, hey, the fish isn't that great. Kind of was odd. You may have somebody who's like, I couldn't even look at the game because of that. You may have like 8 who just play through and don't even really realize because they're so caught up in like the scoring system and things like that.
That's true. That's true. As you fix certain things, it might reveal other problems that people aren't fixating because now you've done one thing and done the next. But this is kind of an endless cycle where, at the very beginning, the reason you were thinking of this is because you spent so much time taking care of these activities and finish these things up. So the fewer things that you have to do to recognize if it's actually an important thing to fix is a huge time saver. So the fewer things that you have to do, the better, because otherwise you could just lose so much additional time or even, be working on things that people wouldn't even notice otherwise.
And during this process, Connor, this polish process, I'll say something to keep in mind is you really have to ask yourself before, even as the creator, is this something that I am having a problem with? Or I don't like how this is feeling? Or is this going to be a general thing like all the players are going to experience? And some of it is going to be instincts, gut, and just what you think, of course, right? Like you think they're all going to have it. It's really you don't know, yada, yada. But again, if you go back to this kind of system of like, well, what's the impact? It's like on visual stuff, it can improve the game. It can make the immersion better. But there's also things where it's like, well, the downside is like the player can't read this label. And if they can't read this font label, they're not able to know what they just activate it. Right. Like it's a lot more clear of being like the impact here is the player will not be able to play the game, period. Like functionally, they won't understand what's happening. Versus the visual is like, well, subjectively, maybe they don't like the immersion. Maybe they're pulled out of the immersion. Maybe it's not as good. And it's very cautious on this because doing this release, I could spot it among the group of 3, including myself in this at times, about saying certain things and being like, I've read every single playtest of 40 people and not a single person's ever said that. I know what the stats say of the players, and nobody's ever said that this is like friction, or they even spotted it, or they think this is going to be bad. And could you do better? Yes. And actually, I think this may be my biggest takeaway I can give the audience listening. getting your game to the 80% is good enough.
Yes. Yep.
And it's actually a dangerous game to try and go all the way to 100, because I feel like once you get to the 80%, let's say this is like the low hanging fruit, all the obvious things, you actually run maybe not an equal, but some level of risk of actually ruining the game. And just 2 days ago, we were talking about features, enhancements, and things. And this is something I had to bring up with the guys and being like, everything you think that will enhance the game possibly could ruin any point in the game of the experience and immersion that you already have on fundamental things. Like visual is usually pretty obvious if you made it worse or you enhanced it. But if you start messing with mechanical core systems like the progress bar, like, oh, I want it tied to money instead of like fish capacity. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, but the way you've perceived the game and all the fun you've had banks probably on that working this way. So maybe we can find a way that's like 5% better. There's also risk that we totally ruin the game. Like we're at 80% and we could kill the game and bring it down to 40% of fun for that component. And I don't think a lot of devs assess this way. They think, oh, I'll just make it better. I'll just find a way to make it better. And there's a counter. Everything you add has a risk to ruin or pull the game down.
And there's a couple things that I'm thinking of, like, as you're talking through. One is this idea of a shiny penny, where you go in and you just keep polish, and on something that is like so minuscule. I know Pixar talked a lot about this, where there was some projects with like the DVD spines on like the Monsters Inc. Movie, or the fish again within Incredibles. There were some things where they finally had to say there were people working on it, and instead of allowing them to continue, they said, well, you can continue, but we're going to give you a scope of limit of what you can work on. If you work on this thing, you have to pull this from somewhere else. And so they used popsicle sticks to kind of track that work. And so that's a technique that people use. The other one is the trade-off, the double arm bandit of explore versus exploit. Early on, you want to explore because you don't know what's there. But as you start to find what works, and you find maybe it's a local maximum, you have to decide, and maybe it's not worth it to continue to explore because you found something that works. And it's so hard when it's tied to your identity of like, oh, I know I could do better. This is my like expression of myself as a game. But sometimes if you've hit the mark, the other one that I like talking about in terms of like playing video games is you're winning more. In a competitive game, I don't know if they have this idea in StarCraft as well, but if you are taking a strategy where a simpler and more effective strategy would have won the game, but you're doing something that wins the game and is stylish, that stylish win condition is just winning more beyond what you would have already been able to do. If you're already the better player, you should just win the game. It doesn't matter how you win it. And sometimes I think it's kind of the same concept in game development what you're describing. Is like, oh, I could do this. I already have a successful game and I could just win more. But usually the downside with that is, like you said, you risk losing at that point because you've gone off the deep end or lost your advantage that you've created because in an effort to try to, pursue this, you ruin what you've already set up.
And there's times where I just call it, where it's just like, oh, we should have the fish arc instead of a straight line. And I'm like, this is a non-mechanical function. Mm-hmm. I actually just don't care. Whatever you guys want. Like, maybe it's better for the player, maybe it's not, but I know it's not likely to ruin it on the experience. Maybe we can squeak out 5% better vibes for the player. But I know the downside is like, you're going to go from an 80 to like 75 because they both achieve the same thing of particles going everywhere and the player feels like they got a reward for it. Okay, whatever. You want to play with that? Sure. Because I think you could get caught up in like theory crafty things and armchairing. Like, well, maybe we should. And this came up the last week, like, oh, it would be really cool if we had X. And I'm like, I actually have already tried that. And it's not. And it sounds good in your head, like flying around with jetpacks. That's such a cool thing. Yeah, that would be so awesome. And I'm like, I actually played around with this. And what it does is it does feel good initially. And it actually kills the fun of the game quicker because you have no downtime of like movement of your character or like infinite cast distance.
Yep.
Oh, I don't have to go to the edge. I can just float in the middle with my jetpack and just cast. Yeah, but you removed any skill in a game that doesn't have a lot of skill.
Yep.
Now it feels really, 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 really good when you first get it because you remove any friction. And guess what? Once you remove any friction, it becomes super boring really quickly.
Yep.
There's no downtime. There's no resistance. There's nothing for you to do now. You just press one button and you literally just wait and you press another button. And something like that can be dangerous because, you know, just this last week, this was something that got proposed. And it was like, I hear what you're saying. I'm listening. I hear it. It is a cool thing. But I tested it. And you have to trust me or we have to go make the build or something. It does feel really good. It will feel really good. But what it'll do is it'll kill your time the moment you get it. It's basically you got like a max of 3 to 5 minutes once you get this thing before you're like, okay, I have nothing to do in this game now.
Yeah. Well, and anybody who's like using Action Replay or Game Shark or something like that knows, right? It's like how many games are you like, oh, let me use all these cheat codes, and you do it, and you're like, okay, I'm done, and you move on to the next game or whatever it is, or you'd go back to playing it normally because you're just like, it was fun for a moment, it was cool to try out, and yeah, I think I'm good, and then you go back to, you know, are they going to refund, or are they going to, you know, keep it, or are they just never going to revisit? So it's definitely interesting to see how that all works.
It's totally a reminder when you're building these that friction's okay, especially if it's designed and intended for the friction to exist. And don't confuse friction with punishing your player. These are different things. You know, there's a lot of times in just keep fishing. You know, I love you, Thomas, but Thomas really wanted to have the player lose money. The mini games, the penguins would like rob you of the money you earned. The fireballs in a level would literally make you lose coins. And I'm like, bro, like it's a chill, lax game that we never punish the player. Why are you so mean to them?
This was allegedly Thomas's idea. Still to be seen. We don't have proof that this.
No, I told him we're not doing that because I understood. It's like, oh, but now you have to have strategy to avoid this, and oh, you have to care about this. And I'm like, but that's not the game we're making.
Yeah.
We're making.
Well, I could see how he would get there too, because I remember him talking about the penguins and how he was enjoying that, or even like, you know, some of the mechanics around it, or the turtle pets, right? And
they're correct.
Yeah.
So we had the penguin game, and they do steal, but they don't steal from your wallet. They steal from the ultimate prize that you can get. So the max you get in the round is 10, whatever for this level is like 10K. Your wallet's untouched. So you can only go up. You only leave, and I cap the floor. The most you can walk away with is like 1,000, so you can never lose to 0. And you still feel like, oh, I could have did better, but at least I'm walking with 1,000. The other one was you went in with your wallet, and they could rob you literally your money to 0, where you felt like the game just stole everything from you.
That's an instant quit. That is, if that happens to someone, that would be so fun. That would make such for a funny moment. And that's it. You know, instead, Thomas, what you should have done, Thomas, is make a short out of that. You know, show that and show the penguins robbing it, and then you would have seen people.
This could be actually a good short of showing what we had before and why we changed it, and what I just described is, and there's a place in time that's the irony, or not the irony, the funny thing in the statement and the counter to the statement is like there's games where that's a valid thing.
Yes.
But this type of game. This does not align to the original vision of chill, laid back, numbers go up, you're just trying to make as much money as possible. Nowhere did we have it anywhere in this where it was like, oh, you actually lose. You can actually, it's almost a loss condition because it actually, you make the player, they lose money, they lose upgrades, they spend more time, they have to catch up. Now all their pacing from this point on is hindered. It's just not the type of game.
And I like the, like, you could still make content out of it, because we see this in a way of like, oh, I had a funny bug in the game and here's what it is and we fixed it, because it still allows you to introduce these ideas and kind of entertain the idea of what if, but you don't actually have to put it in your game. And so you almost have a benefit there where when the people are playing the game, they can play the best version of it. And you could do something funny of like, well, what if we had this wild idea and we did this? And if it doesn't take that long to do, or it's like a bug that you find, you just post about it, and then it makes it more funny because like, haha, that is funny. But that's it. That's like the exact thing. Is it was a funny moment. It was a funny passing thought. Here it is, and we are not doing this because it ruins game in this way. So maybe there's something to explore there too, where, you know, you have.
And I consider this the polish phase, by the way.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
this, we had the game in place. It was what it was.
Hmm.
And I considered polish to go and say, like, are we aligned with the mechanics to what the original game mission is?
Yeah.
And in this case, it was like, I mechanically didn't change anything. The
Yeah.
penguins go, they steal gems, that you still have the amount of money you could walk away with. I just changed the condition of, no, they're not robbing you. They're just taking from the max prize you possibly could get out of this.
Yeah.
And just like that, all of a sudden, you still have the whole, these penguins, I want to beat them up, they're taking my stuff. But you don't feel so bad when you see your number just go like minus 800 off of your 1,000 that you walked in with. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
You're like, Alt F4, no way, I don't want to play this game.
You're limiting the loss aversion that someone feels. It's like it still feels bad. You're taking advantage of that, but you're clamping it to just something that they didn't actually get. Like they get it, but it's not the thing that they've already earned.
Yep. So that it's just stuff that gets overlooked. Like, how do you plan for that?
Yeah. Well, I have a question about this. So, what I'm seeing as well within kind of the indie game space is that there are more people filling that role that you're describing on a team. Mm-hmm. Where it's someone who is understanding the game design, someone who is looking at it from this perspective, maybe is doing more research into some of like the player behaviors and psychology of these things, or just human psychology in general, and also maintaining the timelines. Now, I would kind of consider this person somewhat of a producer. They're not the person who's looking at the overall game design, like what the vision is related to that specific fantasy. Maybe there's overlap there, but it's kind of this like producer role of like you said, just like knowing how players in general respond to things and over like many projects, what that looks like. So what do you think of that? Is that kind of how you see yourself, or like, what would you say that your role in particular is in addition, like giving it some kind of shape and form? And if you can think about other people, like, again, who are kind of like talking about these ideas and concepts and fill a similar role, like, how do you describe what you're doing in a way that maybe people can relate to and understand that, like, in a way that you have an artist or a music designer or game programmer? Like, what would you describe what you're doing?
So the producer role is interesting, but I would caution that I think a lot of people think that's their role, and they believe that, and they aren't adequately equipped to make those decisions. I think if you want to be the producer to come in and say, like, players are going to be stuck here, that you have to end understand the game, all components, all systems, to truly be able to make that call. You need to understand the psychology, why things were designed that way, the tree, the pacing, what the intended mechanics are, to really come in and say, hey, the player here is very likely to have friction against X, and we should modify that. More likely what I see is not know all systems, be very high level, come in and say, this is just going to make players not like this. And it's like, but like going back to just keep fishing, it's like, if you say that about diamonds on that level, but you don't fully grasp end to end all the systems, you don't realize, but it's designed to slowly make them feel like they shouldn't care, that it is a chore, and that they should ignore picking up all this stuff. Someone who's not constantly involved in understanding all the systems will just say, there's too much friction, you should make less of them, they shouldn't get stuck up in these mountains, it's too tedious, just scrap it. The player's gonna say it's too tedious. But I know this works because we've had people play through, and watching them in the comments, they all say the same thing. It was becoming tedious. I wish there wasn't. And then the end result of them playing the game was, oh my God, it was so insane that I just forgot about everything. I didn't care about picking up the stuff. And it's just, it was designed to nudge you along so that I can't take you to the end where everything's like that, because you would just be like, oh my God, this is too much. I have to get you there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So,
there's that whole onboarding as well, that to get to that point and knowing when it's in sequence it happens too.
So it doesn't happen a lot because most people probably listening aren't at a team size where you would have quote unquote someone with just a solo producer title. They're going to likely be actively involved and know all the systems, because if you're a dev or artist and your team is like 3 or less, you pretty much are going to have to understand how everything's working because you can't just carve out a sliver and just put on your headphones and be like, I don't care. It's like
Yeah.
you're wearing many hats. You're designing the art. You're going to say, well, what are the abilities? What does the skill tree have? When does the player get this? You are building up a repertoire of understanding. Once you hit maybe 3 or above, you start having a spot where you could have an artist and a dev, and then you could have someone who says, well, I'm a producer. But then if you don't fully understand the system and you're just playing the game, then you don't understand why everything was intended and designed that way. And now you're just as an outsider, as a player.
Yes.
And then you have to be cautious because you could be just pushing the games towards what the game you want to play is, not the game that the players will play. Now, sometimes they're the same, right? But sometimes they're definitely not. You can make a great game for an audience of one. It's called yourself. It's your dream game, and nobody else gives a shit. No one else wants to play it.
Oh man. So, well, so I appreciate that you're talking about being involved from the beginning, because that's really what I see that role is of the stories we're hearing coming out. It's the people who are there from the beginning. Maybe they're involved with the pitch. They're not necessarily working from the code from the start, but it is very much this is someone on the team who is helping move the project forward, look at the timelines, maybe doing some of the outreach and marketing, and the promotion and all those other things. In addition to, they understand the game well enough to see the systems and how they make someone feel. And I do think it's beneficial. Like, if you have a developer who can do that, great. But I think sometimes you almost need the developers to hold on to that. Oh, what about this? What about that? Because they have to generate their ideas without like self-filtering themselves. And when you have someone who, again, knows the game well enough, like you're describing, in addition to is like looking out for the best interest of how it performs, it's really, really powerful. And it seems like there are more people who are popping up in that role, which is, there's kind of this in between where it's like, oh, maybe you get started as a developer, maybe you get started as an artist. But again, someone like yourself and some of these other people who we're seeing pop up, it's like, it seems like that will become more and more common, that, someone can help out in that way. But it's not just someone, like you said, who's sitting down playing the playtest and going, oh, here's what I think, because I did this, that, and that. It's like you are in the whole design process. In a way, maybe it is just a designer, but I don't know. There's something about it where the word producer just kind of lands, but I don't think it's perfect either. And then the big difference for me, what you described of someone who is just playing the game, throwing out opinions, that is also the problem of what I see when people give advice on games that are outside as well. Like if I'm a playtester playtesting one of your games, which I have done before, I try to be very cognizant of when I'm going into too much solutioning, because I know that I don't understand the depth of it. But I don't think every single playtester knows that. And I think many developers want to help out their other developers by giving this advice and saying these things, not realizing that it can be dangerous and throw a project totally the wrong direction if you don't see the through lines or have that experience of what you're talking about.
A people pleaser or inexperienced person, this can be a detriment to a project. Like if I took someone who's heavily a people pleaser and I gave them just key fishing and they read the playtest, the game would likely be ruined and not meet the deadline. Because there are many, I love the playtesters, but there are many comments I read and I'm like, yeah, because it's like the game, the pie has been baked. This is the type of game it is. I get you don't like this type of game. Everything else you say past this point, it's not that you don't have good ideas. It's like, it's not your game.
Yes.
It's that simple. Like, it's a very linear game, or it feels like, why are there drones instead of I don't know, fishing boats docking this off? The thematics is just throwing me. Like
that was my advice.
But it's like, this is the type of the game it is, and those are valid things, and maybe the theme could have been better on that. And if that's the reason you don't play the game, then the game's not for you. There will be an audience who just laughs and says, oh, it's a silly game, and oh my goodness, there's drones to drop off packages. This makes no sense. But the game's supposed to not make any sense. You're a little wobbly character that has broken physics. The fishing rods, like, half the time don't really work because the physics is broken, and like, that is the theme. It's a silly, doesn't make really sense game. So yeah, it is a dangerous spot with the playtester feedback. I think in this last 2 weeks, and to wrap up on your question, I don't see myself as a producer, though I can definitely see people saying that. I actually had to ask ChatGPT recently about this because, like, I need some. What am I?
Yeah. The Christ. I know exactly what you mean.
What am I doing? And it was like, oh, you could say like expert refinement, creative, like director, things like this. I couldn't get it to give a title, but what I could get it to do is find people who have done similar things.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I think his name is Robert Rubin.
Okay.
He's a musician, or just his last name is Rubin, I believe. And he actually can't really play a musical instrument. He can play basic chords on a guitar. Yeah, he's produced some of the greatest music you've ever heard. And what he does is, and in his own words, to what I read, was he takes something that's good and he makes it exceptional. And I think that's what, I can't give you a word for that, but that is what I do, is I don't make the pie. You make the pie, and then I get it to be the exceptional pie. Like, I get a good game, and I make it an exceptional game. And I'm not very good at making a good initial game. I think I have tons of weaknesses, tons of gaps on exploration phase, analysis paralysis, not having skill set on making core mechanics. But, just keep fishing at the very end. The group was like, bro, you just saw. Yeah. You saw where we were, and you saw where you want to go. And it worked. It worked. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Whatever that process is what I do, I guess, now. Yeah.
And I don't think there needs to be a name for it. One of the challenges is so much of how we kind of think of our identity is around some of these titles. And like, it's a convenient way to label ourselves. But I also think sometimes it can be limiting because the word that we choose to use as that convenience to communicate to other people, sometimes it's like, if I don't know that I'm looking for what you're offering, like, I just don't even know how to search for that. And so again, it's like that convenience. But I hope that everybody can come away saying there are skills that you might offer to the indie game space that no one else is doing. And it's more about what is the activity, what are you doing, and what things do you feel like you can offer up, and just do those things. And don't worry if it's not a title. But I hope that in the indie space, as more and more of these opportunities pop up, there's people, I make music, I, refine dynamic music systems, I do visual effects, things like that. You don't have to be a VFX artist to do that thing. Maybe that's convenient as a way to start off from somewhere, but it's not limiting to only that. And I think it's going to become even more true as we see more and more tooling to allow people to branch off into these different disciplines too. And it's almost better to have that mindset of, you recognize that this is something that you can do, you just do it, and you continue to do it game after game, and that's the proof. And if you want to call yourself a producer, or you want to call yourself just a game creator in general, great. And it doesn't mean that you can't do some of those other things. It just means you just know what you can do. On the topic of music, though, and on polish, I actually hate the word polish, and I hate the word juice. I can't stand it. But I do love the word dynamics as it relates to music, because it describes what you've been kind of talking about as well, where there's one layer where you can go loud, you can make it all, in your face, you can make it flashy and all these different things. That's what people, I think, would think of as juice. You would say polish is the thing that happens at the end, but I think it misses the point of the contrast, where there's those moments in the game where things go slow, where there's the one I like to talk about is in Super Mario 64, when you jump in the water, the fact that the sound dampens, that's not loud, that's not in your face, but it is creating a moment for it to be different. And in music, it's the same idea, where you have sections of a song that are loud, that are soft, that are played quickly, that are played more smooth, maybe that have some silence in it. And in this producer mindset, you're kind of, or composer mindset too, you're thinking about how it all relates and how a song might be performed. And so as a beginning musician, what you might do is you look at the sheet music, you play from start to finish, you accurately play every single note exactly as how it's written. But if you're not looking at forte, piano, the ties, how things are phrased, or thinking about even the pacing of it, where it's not written in, but you kind of know what the composer was going for, that's a difference where you go from something that is technically correct to something that people love and listen to. And so also bringing it back to this idea of names, I think that calling it polish, calling it juice is not doing a service to what this practice is. And I think if we were to use something like dynamics, that it would be more descriptive of how you should be thinking about it, and that it is something that happens all throughout. It's not the thing that just happens at the very, very end. There's a lot of it that happens then, but even things at the beginning that you can think about, how is the game moving through and what's this experience like? And I hope that out of everything, this is my pitch to people, think about it differently. Like, make it so that in your mind, it's more than just these subcategories of it, and it's not tied to a time. It is a pacing, it is a feeling, and you can be technically correct, but you can also get the experience wrong if you are ignoring some of these things that Corey's been talking about this episode. So that's my pitch on dynamics. What do you think?
I just call it whatever people want to call it.
All
Dynamics,
right, we're calling it dynamics. It's decided.
I mean, because the issue I have is, or not even the issue I have, the thing is, the way that I will say polish encompasses whatever is going to be probably different than everyone else.
Yes.
And what some people think polish is might just simply be, oh, it's just the animations, because they've already done all the work. So their ending is going to look very different than whatever my ending is. And maybe there's, again, like you said, a better word to describe it. There's probably somebody who's like, oh, the actual definition applied to game design for polish is blah, 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 and it means this, and you're not using it that way. But then there's like, how do people actually say it, and how they interact? I would say just realize that whatever you call it, there's a lot of it to do.
Oh man, and prepare for it. And I think the other advice was, whatever you think it's going to take that much longer. Just throw any estimations out the window, because it's going to take a while.
And building up a repertoire of this stuff is good. I would actually challenge people to say, I think doing a game jam, like a 10-day game jam, I think is a good 10 to 14-day like wild jam for Godot is a good timeline to do something like this. The exercise would be to essentially cut your time in half and say that is development time.
Okay.
And then the other half of that time is going to be dynamics, polish, juice, whatever you want to describe this as, to finesse and refine your skill set of that. Because the odd thing that I could say is a lot of this does get left to the end.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm making the argument that like this is like 60 to 70% of the effort, really,
mm-hmm.
But it's at the very end, how many times are you actually doing it?
Yeah.
It means probably every game jam you've done at this point isn't really doing it because you're already crunched on time, and what you're doing is you're filling on feature work.
Yeah.
That's
been exactly my experience, and why I think I struggle with this so much is because I am not at the skill set where I can even do a game jam in 5 days and get it. Mostly because I'm doing too many features, scope creep, all these things. But that's definitely helpful, to think about it. Like,
I think this is where some of the advice creeps out on just get a game on Steam and do a short game and get it out, mm-hmm. and ship a game, is because it gets you through the cycle. And I think it exposes you not only to how Steam works and all these processes and all that, it gets you through this last 20% that ends up really being this 60, 70, 80% of the workload.
Yeah.
And on jams, you're just really not going to be exposed a lot to it because you're going to pack it with features.
Yeah.
Jam over jam, I look and it's like feature. And it's like, yeah, but you know what? There's no refinement. Yeah. And you can practice these. Like I said, you just scope down, you cut your time in half of wherever your jam is, and you're like, that's development time, that's mechanic time. Everything else is just making whatever I come up with as good as possible. It really possibly could be. Whether it's the sound, visuals, whether it's the bounciness, whether it's just the explanation of it, how the player interacts with it, how intuitive is it for the player to recognize what they're doing, all that stuff, these skill sets, I think are just the undervalued secret to being probably a good game dev.
Yeah. And I think game jams being so accessible, that would be perfect for someone in my position where, I can go join the next Godot Wild Jam and just try it. And it's not even about trying to come in first place or all these things. the ratings and how people receive my game will kind of be the proof of the qualitative proof of, hey, am I doing a better job making people enjoy the experience? Because now people are like, oh, this was fun, like commenting on the things that are there in a small package. So that's great for me, someone at my size. For someone maybe who's more around where you are at, maybe they've released a couple games, I would imagine that Steam Next Fest is kind of that point. Again, you've put it out in front of a player base. There's a point that you have to get from between, we've kind of done that big marketing beat. This is what we think is the best part, into now we have some feedback and getting into a final release. Is that not the right window to think about doing some of these things? Did you do that even before Steam Next Fest? Like, what do you have for the studios who maybe are a little bit more along the way?
There's a lot of variables.
Okay.
Like, do I think Just Keep Fishing should have been more polished going into the next fest? Probably.
Yeah.
More dynamic. Sorry.
It's all right. You could use polish, whatever you want.
But there's other factors, and we just simply didn't have the time, and we spent more time on prototyping, and maybe that's a lesson to learn, that we should have been able to scope down and get to the core mechanics of the game quicker and not have spent so much time on the exploration. But would we have ever even found the game that we found if we didn't? I don't know.
Yeah.
And the thing that comes to mind on this, for those who might do this, is go watch Jonas Tyroller's video on like how to make a button fun, or how to make this fun. The thumbnail is literally just a button, and I think his entire video is the whole game is just pressing a button. And he's like, how fun can we make this? How engaging can we make that? Like, for people who are listening and saying, how would I ever do a jam in half the time? I'm already struggling to finish it in whatever. Or, oh, the scope's going to be way too limited. I won't have anything. But that's kind of the point of this exercise. It's as silly as your game is just a button. And how good can you make it that people want to press that button and see the score up?
Yeah.
Because you'd be surprised. Black Hole on my Godot talk it's 2 screens, guys. It's skill tree and like main game kill asteroids. Skill tree, asteroids. Like, and the scene on the Black Hole game doesn't even change. Only the asteroid colors change.
Yeah, that's true.
But everything else is just so amped up and feels so good. And it has the sound effects and the visuals and like the little nuance and like HP in the asteroid and like clamping everything, that it works. So make the button, guys. Make the single button game.
Make the button. Okay, I think that's a good place to wrap it. Lots of really great advice, I think, from beginners, people like me, and people who maybe are getting into that phase when they're getting ready to release their game. Lots of ways to add these dynamics to your game, do the polish, add the juice, whatever you want to call it. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge. We have links in the description if you want to follow either of our works. I have talked about my 30-day prototype and what went wrong with that. Part of it might be because I was focused on the wrong thing. So if you're interested in checking out that blog post, I have it down there. As always, thanks for your time, Corey, and we'll talk to all of you next time.
Bye. I pressed the record button.
I see the big red button.